It's been the weirdest thing. I gotta talk to you about it because it's just kind of been irking at me a little bit for the last few months. Funerals, where have they gone? I'm Denise. Today I'm going to talk to you about funerals and lack thereof. You know, you read the obituaries in the paper. At least when you live in a small community, I tend to read them to find out who I know and don't know, whose mothers died, whose fathers died, whatever. More and more younger people are dying. It's quite sad. But what I've noticed is a lot of people are choosing not to have a funeral service or a celebration of life. And you don't see that so much. So my question is, what happened to funerals? You know, in my age group or older, there should be funerals galore happening, and it isn't happening. And one of my friends passed away and there was no service. And I kind of disagree a little bit with that, because I think there has to be closure to someone's life. You can't just sort of be on the earth for 70 or 80 or whatever years and then you're gone. I mean, heck, you see people waxing poetic about their dog that died, and then mom or dad can die and they don't even hardly get a mention. I don't know about that, but it kind of bothers. Well, it did until the other day. So the other day, I'm in our local nursery, and an old friend who I haven't seen for, I'm gotta be honest, 20 years. We're talking about an acquaintance of ours, and she said, "Oh yeah, and you remember Norma?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I was gonna go and see her. She's been living on the island." I said, "When were you gonna go?" She said, "I was gonna go the end of May, but she phoned me the other night, and she said she wanted to phone and tell me goodbye." And I said, "Goodbye?" And she says, "Yeah." I said to her, "Where are you going?" And she says, "No, you don't understand. I'm getting MAID, which is medically assisted in dying." And I know it can be a controversial subject. And I know it differs in provinces, states, and countries. But this is what I think is happening with MAID, and the reason I'm going to have it when it's my turn. There's a lot of rules and regulations. You can't just say, today I'm going to plan for my death after Christmas. No, you have to be pretty much near the end. And you have to have a form signed by the doctors, and also your wishes have got to be pretty much written out. It's not an easy decision to make. More and more people are making it, and I think that's why we're seeing less and less funerals. Because think about it for a minute. Now, right now, you can't have MAID, at least in Canada, if you've got Alzheimer's. But in, I think it's Sweden, or Finland, I'm not sure, they've passed a law that you can, at the early onset dementia, ask to have MAID when you're near the end of your life. And of course, here you have to be mentally competent, but they're really been reviewing that for people that have Alzheimer's, so that they can make that decision at the beginning. And then if they choose to so have MAID near the end of their life cycle, it's been agreed on at that point when they're not mentally competent. What happens with MAID? And I'm going to give you kind of the nicest scenario, okay? I'm hoping this is how it happens for me, but who knows? I'm sick, I'm in pain. The doctor said that everything is spread, there's nothing more we can do. You've only got a few weeks left to live. Now, before you jump to conclusions, that hasn't happened. I'm just telling you the scenario. Now, of course, as everybody else, you want to be at home in your own room, in your own surroundings, with family that you love. And I started thinking about making your own death, arranging for when you are going to die. It gives you so many opportunities. So instead of a bunch of almost strangers parading into the church, now you have the opportunity to talk to family and friends, either in person, by phone, Zoom call, and tell them exactly how you feel. Now, my mom, we didn't have MAID back in 2001. But when she was dying, I would arrange for different people to come and see her. And because she was weak, she could only see them for a while. But at that time, she also had little things like little bits of jewelry. For instance, she had a friend from Ireland, and she wanted to give her Waterford glass crystal pendant, things like that. And so these people were coming in to her room pretty steadily, having a cup of tea, having a little talk, having some laughs, having some tears, talking about their friendships. And Mom would also get on the phone, talk to her brother in England and talk to her nephews in England. She was in control. Well, fast forward all those years now that M.A.I.D is legal. That's sort of what you're doing. You're being in control of and planning your death. So you can tell the people that you love them yourself. You can still have a service, of course. Not saying don't have a service, but how nice to be able to talk to your family on your term. If you want to give special little things to somebody, yes, you can do that. You can make those arrangements. But this is about you being in control of the end of your life. And when you are feeling good, you have, I'm not saying a big party, okay, a celebration of your time on earth. How beautiful is that? And this is what my friend's friend, that's what she decided to do. And she was phoning people and telling them goodbye. Mentally, I'm all with it. Physically, there's not much of me left. And I really wanted to have a little laugh with people and talk to people that I've known for years. So is that such a bad thing? I don't know. More and more people I know that have cancer or Parkinson's decide that they want to have M.A.I.D. And it's still frowned upon by a lot of people. Go, well, that's just the same as committing suicide. That's a sin. But I'm not sure that it is. And I don't want to sort of get into a pissing match with anybody about whether or not they should have M.A.I.D or whether or not they shouldn't, because that's totally an individual decision to make. But I'm looking at it as a way of being able to talk to people that you love and care about and share those last part of your days with them. Kind of beautiful, eh? Kind of beautiful. I've talked to my palliative care doctor about this. There has to be forms that have to be signed. I also had to sign forms on what kind of DNR, do not resuscitate, I want. It was a heavy haul. It really was. You just didn't sit down and go, well, yeah, when the time comes, I'm going to die. No, that isn't the way it is. Legalities that have to be dealt with. And so I did. Everything's put away in a safe place, and when the time comes, everybody knows what to do, right down to the music. So there you go. Think about it. If you've got a terminal illness, doesn't mean that you have to do anything tomorrow, because you can't, okay? M.A.I.D doesn't allow that. You have to be near the end of your life cycle before you, and you may agree with it, you may not agree with it, and you may not agree with a loved one that's decided to do that. But you know what? It's their decision, and you should let them do it if that's what they want to do, because it gives them peace at the end of the day. I mean, you have a cat or a dog that you love, you put them down when the time is right. You, as a human being, have that ability to say that. Lucky you. So think about it, okay? Like I say, it's not for everybody. I don't want to start a big controversy here, but I've noticed more and more people are doing it, and it's like they're taking control of the last part of their life, when sometimes they're under so much medication, they're barely coherent. Have you been recently to a funeral service or a celebration of life, and the officiator is someone who doesn't know the person who's passed, and they go on about the person? Example, Jim was a great father, great grandfather. He loved his kids. He worked hard all his life. He loved to volunteer. But sometimes these people have never met the person or even know the person that they're talking about, which is a shame, because each and every one of us are individual, and we're made up of good and bad, funny and sad. And sometimes it's just fun to share that information, because a funeral or a celebration of life sure doesn't have to be all sad, right? So I'm going to give you a little antidote here. Just snip it in. This is quite a few years ago. Alan and I went to a service for a relative, and this relative was a rodeo mom. She worked a full-time job. She had 3 strapping boys, and every spare moment of her and her husband's life was spent driving those boys around to different rodeo events. That was her life. And one day she invited us over to her house, and it was a double wide on a plot of dirt. And I mean a plot of dirt because they had no time to landscape. They lived out in the country. It was all muddy. There was paddocks for horses. Everything was filthy. I went to the bathroom, and the bathtub was filled with dirty blue jeans. And I was judgmental back then. I hope I'm not that way now, but back then I was young. And I thought, how could a person live like that? Good God. Came time when M passed away, and this lady had been hired by the family to talk about her. She had never met her, didn't know her. So this is what she said. M was a fantastic mother and wife. She loved and took great pride in her housekeeping. I'm thinking. Anyway, she loved to bake and she loved to cook for her family. She was a true family woman. She was a wonderful mother and a wonderful wife. Luckily, someone in the family decided to speak up, because what M was a rodeo mom. She didn't give two hoots about her house. She didn't have time to cook, and God knows she didn't bake. She loved going to casinos, and once the boys had grown up, her and her husband used to love going in the motorhome and hitting the casinos. She was in her glory. They used to win quite a bit too. She was happy. I remember her as a heavy smoking, raucous laughter, down-to-earth, fun-loving woman. And that's the woman that this family member ended up talking about, just as it should be. We all have good and bad parts. We have sad parts and we have happy parts. When you're talking about someone at a service, oftentimes everything is glossed over till only the good parts come out. But there was a lot to her. An awful lot to her. And that's what we had a good laugh and talked about after the service was over. We all talked about M and all the crazy things she always did. She was a riot. So now, when I'm talking to you about M.A.I.D, maybe you can understand a little bit that for me, I want people to be around me, that we can talk about some of those fond and happy, crazy times. Like me and my girlfriends, we did some stupid things in our 30s and 40s. We still laugh about them now, and we'd probably like to laugh about them when I'm on my deathbed. I love my kids, I love my grandkids, I love my husband, all that, for sure. But I'm more than that. I'm a person who led a pretty, incredible life and had some pretty happy adventures. Really. Just like I'm not defined by cancer or MS, I am who I am. And that's why I think, more than anything, I believe in M.A.I.D only because I think people have a right to say what they feel. Hey, you may not want to hear it, but they have a right to say it. I would rather tell people to their face that I love them than have some stranger stand up at the front of the church talking about me who'd never met me ever. And they certainly wouldn't be able to talk about some of the things my girlfriends and I used to do. Never. But that was me. That's who I am. That's who I want you to remember, the person that I am. So I want to say thank you for listening to my little rant. I mean, I guess I'm at that age where more and more people I know are getting ill. I want you to please consider subscribing if you wish, like if you want. You know I love hearing from every one of you, and you know how much I care about you. And I know how much you care about me. You guys are amazing, you know. Got 606 subscribers now. You know, my goal's 1,000. Then I can finally just relax a little bit. Not that I'm under a lot of pressure, because, you know, I only make one video every 2 weeks, so it's not like but I never know what to talk about. And then all of a sudden one night I'll be going to bed and something will pop into my head and I'll go, oh, yeah. Like the other night after meeting my friend at the nursery, I went, that's really an interesting thing. I've never noticed how few funerals were happening anymore. I never really gave it a thought. And then I started hearing more. Like friends would phone and say, oh, did you hear so-and-so died? They're having M.A.I.D. They're going to have M.A.I.D. I don't necessarily think you need to say that, do you? So-and-so died, period. I don't have to say how they died. I mean, gee. Enjoy the day. See you in a couple of weeks. Bye for now.